Good morning. I barely got, I'm a total mess because I wanted to get up here and get this out of the way as soon as possible. So I actually saw spoilers. There's spoilers going around. So I came into this episode kind of braced to be really upset. And then I'm kind of okay with it. It's not that I go, yeah, that's the right decision. It's just other things are taking up my attention a bit more. So there will be spoilers, of course. So this is RuPaul's Drag Race episode, season 12, episode 8, Droop. It's a product placement one. We saw this, I believe, for the first time in season 2. I just remember Yara Sophia's Papa Don't. This is a long thing. Anyway, so we've seen this before. We have Britta leaving. Whatever. I actually saw Britta in the Review with a Jew with Miss Cracker. Ms. Cracker? I believe it's Ms. Cracker. Ms. Cracker, and Britta was saying how it was really tough to watch and she had to brace herself every week and she wished she hadn't fought so much. And so for me, that's kind of like it's all water under the bridge. So however I felt about Britta is kind of gone. I'm willing to consider giving her another chance. But we've seen a lot of people do that. Who, like Fifi O'Hara, who was like, I totally regret the way I behaved on camera, and then they go back and do All Stars and it happens again. But for whatever, there you go. Jan is basically, I would say, almost hysterical because Britta left. Wonder how she feels now that she saw Britta saying that Jan thinks she's all that in a bag of chips, and she's not. Anyway, most people aren't buying it. Jan's saying, hey, it's not because I didn't win this challenge, it's because Britta's gone. I actually think it would make more sense. I actually think that's kind of almost weird to be that upset. I would almost prefer her to be upset because she didn't win. They do a Kiki session. A lot of people are saying that this is the new reading challenge. I kind of hope, I like the reading challenge. In the past, we've had the reading challenge and the Everybody Loves Puppets. So I would like to see the reading challenge come back this season, but we're getting down to the nitty gritty, so they got to get it going. But this is also a product. Maybe they had to figure out how to do the reading challenge with product placement. Gigi and Jackie are paired up, Crystal and Jada, Jan and Heidi, Widow and Sherry. And it is getting to the point where whenever I see Sherry, I go, oh my gosh, I forgot Sherry's even there. So there you go. They do, Gigi and Jackie win. I thought everyone did pretty okay. Poor Heidi talks about making $9,000 a year at a gas station. And Heidi I just put a heart next to Heidi's name every time I see it. I think Heidi is so sweet and so fun. And I was trying to think of how to describe it, but I would say if I had to be stuck on a plane next to one of them or a meet and greet where you just sort of mingle, Heidi's who I'd want to be with. She is just this joy, and she takes her lumps with her highs, and it never seems to really change who she is, and just really coming out. So to do the product placement, we have Bob Harper there, who doesn't say a whole lot. Shaka Khan will be the other guest, will be the guest judge. Bob Harper was only there for the challenge. So I don't have a lot of notes. I feel like we didn't even see everyone. I know we didn't see Sherry. Jackie's doing a Dream of Jeannie. I enjoy that. I wrote 20 minutes. I don't know what that means. 20 minutes? Anyway, Gigi is doing, we see the filming. Gigi's kind of low energy. Jan is the opposite. She is super high energy, and it is just high energy the moment she appears until the end. Heidi, I just put a heart next to her because Heidi is so sweet. The more we see of Heidi, the more I just really love her. My impression overall was that, oh, Sherry's still there. That's my impression. Crystal looks super messy coming into this when you saw the filming. Now, sometimes I wonder why they show us the filming, since it doesn't seem to have any effect on judging half the time, then the other half it does. So it's all that, it's Black Wedding. I didn't even write anything really down because I thought everyone was so good. I thought everyone's was really good. The one thing I want to point out is that I do notice that Heidi's makeup is not, under these lights, is not as consistent, and that's something that I've heard from a lot of drag queens, is that if you're Instagram, you do stuff on Instagram and pictures, and then you go underneath the lights, it's really different. And if you don't have a lot of experience, a lot of drag queens have said that after seeing themselves on RuPaul's Drag Race, they were able to make corrections to their makeup. And so it's kind of funny to me because everyone acts like it's just a given that Heidi's makeup is not as you know, is not as at the peak it could be, but no one's really saying anything to her on the judging stage. So I think that's kind of weird, but she just had my heart. So anyway, they watch all the videos. Jackie is so fun. I wrote meh for Jan. Jada is delightful. Just so beautiful and delightful. Gigi was eh. Sherry was eh. Heidi has my heart. She was so fun. She makes fun of herself. The big thing for me with Gigi is a lot of the jokes were kind of about how awesome she is. Like, it costs this much because that's how much I've won so far. And you're like, ooh. And I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think she's doing something that, it doesn't work. Making jokes about how awesome you are doesn't work unless there has to be a tension. So you just saying, I'm beautiful and rich and I'm doing super well at the competition, there's no twist, there's no punchline. So whereas Jada saying the worst actor on Grey's Anatomy gets called out, it is a truth, but there's some conflict and some tension in there. And I think Gigi is making a similar misstep that Brooklyn Heights did for me last year. And I'm going to say that there's a lot of similarities, being young, beautiful, stunning, white. We're starting to notice kind of a trend where the fans like, I need to tell you this because this is relevant, which is Trixie's documentary Moving Parts is now on Netflix. So if you are a fan of Trixie like I am and have been thinking, oh, I should get around to buying this documentary, it is now available for streaming on Netflix. And one of the things that she talks about was a lot about how the drag queen is this embodiment of confidence, and that's what people are paying for. But I think we need to have this sense of, now we don't have as much with RuPaul. I wouldn't say that I see a lot of vulnerability in RuPaul, but what we seem to want from our RuPaul Drag Race stars tends to be what we saw in Katya, which is like, yes, I have this insecurity and I'm fighting it at all times, and I'm also trying to embrace this wonderfulness. And then that conflict is within all of us. We want to believe that we're amazing and powerful and we can do anything, but we also are living with the reality that we know that we have these weaknesses. And I think we want that represented in our drag queens. Which for me, so the big I ask everyone who should go. Everyone agrees Widow. Widow says Jan. I mean, what else RuPaul will not accept of me. So Jan was the only one who kind of got as much criticism. A lot of people said that Sherry should have been in the bottom, but you know, they do judge on the challenge, but they also kind of zoom back a little bit and look at the other challenge, and Sherry has done very well in other challenges. I can't tell you how well Sherry's done because I can't remember, because we never see it. It's never dwelled on. And they have just erased Sherry from the season, which is the most devastating thing. You know, it's the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And they have made the whole audience completely indifferent to Sherry. I don't remember her. Maybe I would have been perfectly fine with Sherry being in the bottom against Widow and Widow sending her home, but that is not what happened. Jan was in the bottom. A lot of people are still hurt because they felt that last week Jan deserved it. I agree with that. I'm okay with Jan going home. Interesting note is that I watch the show at night. I try to watch, it's 2-hour show, so I try to watch as much as I can. My toddler's bedtime, we start the bedtime process at 8, and the show ends at 8, which means I usually cannot finish the show the night before and put my toddler to bed, and so usually I watch about half of it, and then I watch the other half in the morning. And in the morning, my toddler is right behind where the TV is, so I watch it like super, super quiet. As such, sometimes it is so quiet I read it more than watch it. So the lip sync for me was really kind of, I didn't hear the music. So I didn't see either one of them as being a standout because I couldn't hear the music. A lot of people felt that Jan won or they both won. And a lot of people said, no, you're just being racist. Widow won. Now that is a discussion that I don't feel equipped to have because I certainly don't have enough knowledge on the issue, but I think there's definitely some bias towards a certain kind of queen, the tiny little pretty queen, the young ones. there does seem to be some preference for white queens, which is where when I finished the episode, my gut reaction is, why is everyone ignoring Jada? That was my response. She is just as beautiful as Gigi. She is a little quiet, which means we don't get as much of her personality, but she is a lot funnier than she's being given credit for. She's not pointing fingers. She's not getting real full of herself. She is stunning. Her clothes are stunning. Her makeup is unbelievable. My notes every single week and every single recap is like, she looks beautiful. She looks perfection. And she has some real humor chops that come out. Now they're a little more, they're not real like yucka, 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 yucka kind of humor. But she gets them in there. Like, she does it in this sly, Julianne Sugarbaker from Designing Women kind of way, where she's cool and she's calm and she's collected, but she slips it in there. She has not taken herself too seriously, which I saw some people saying about Gigi. You know, she's starting to be like, I'm so amazing. And she wasn't really wrapped up in any of these big fights where she was pointing fingers too much. She did a killer Aiden impression that I didn't feel was mean. It was just super sly. So I am wondering why so many people aren't talking about Jada and what a strong competitor she is. Now, I personally tend to veer toward comedy queens. Any season you ask me who I enjoy, and they're the ones who make me laugh or at least smile. Okay, so I was not predisposed to either Gigi or Jada because they're both just beautiful queens. And to me, it just feels really weird. Now, Gigi has performed a little better than Jada. So I'm not saying Jada should be your favorite, but I'm just surprised that that more people aren't talking about what a strong competitor she is. It seems to be all focused. Now, with Jan going home, and I assume that Widow will likely go home next, or Crystal. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is Crystal talked a little bit about her dad and how her dad's so sick. And I think this is something that is affecting her performance because she is absent from a lot of scenes. She's just not talking. Now, a lot of shows I watch that are competitive reality shows, not talking is a good way to kind of stay a little bit out of sight and sneak into the finale. Does not work with RuPaul's Drag Race. If you're not getting the interviews, you're not being involved. Literally there'll be times where I'll be like, oh, I've forgotten about Crystal. And Crystal deserves more attention, but I think, this is my impression, is that Crystal is so preoccupied with her father being so sick, is a fully legitimate reason for not being there 100%. I don't know the situation with the quarantine, but usually they don't have a lot of contact with the outside world. So they're not talking. She's not checking up on her father. Most likely she would get a message if her father was deathly ill, really genuinely. But if you're not familiar, if you've ever had someone in your life who if they just didn't wake up one day, it wouldn't be a shock. It is a big weight to kind of hang over your head. And I think that's what's affecting Crystal. I thought it was really interesting that when Michelle Visage says, oh, Crystal's done a 180. I don't think so. I think Crystal's done a 5-degree turn. I get what she's saying because what they see on the stage, it's hard for us to parse that out from what we see over the whole episode. But Crystal is so interesting, such a unique point of view, has shown amazing makeup skills. It's really tough to go for a super distinctive look and show versatility without losing your voice. And she's done that. Like this week was amazing. It was a super strong choice. You could see how it fit in the Crystal brand, but nobody could say that this was the same makeup she's always done. It reminded me a bit of Jinx Monsoon with her Day of the Dead look, where it was just so strong. And so I feel a little bit, Crystal reminds me a little bit of Pandora Box, who was one of my favorites in one of the early seasons, came back for All Stars, and I just always felt like they don't see what I see. And I feel like maybe Crystal's gonna fall into that box. But I've watched a lot of competitive reality shows. I've watched a lot of seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race, but also things like Top Chef, Ink Master, Project Runway, and there's always sort of this middle group that never quite gets their footing. They get a little bit off and then everything is just 5% off and they never quite nail it. And it gets hard, and it's like a tractor pull. If you don't know what a tractor pull is, they have a thing behind them. They go really fast and the dirt gathers up behind them. And so the farther they go, the harder it gets. And that is definitely what happens if you get off your footing. Crystal is fighting, Crystal, Jan, and Widow to a certain degree are all fighting this, which is the farther along they go, the more effort they need to, the better they need to be to overcome. So I was actually just watching with Trixie and Katya, and they were talking about their experience on Drag Race. I can't remember which episode it was. There's quite a few episodes where they talk about their experience on Drag Race, and they talk about this where, like, Trixie talks about if you leave and come back, you've got to be perfect to stay, and anything sends you home. It's kind of the same way right now. We have the front runners, we have Gigi. I'm going to say that they view Sherry that way. They're that I would say, I don't know why they're not treating Jada as a front runner in this competition, because to me, they should be. I don't quite understand why neither the fans or, now maybe everybody just assumes she's really good, but doesn't, she's not people's favorite. I don't know. I would love to see more of Jada, because I feel like she has this cutting, hilarious personality, and we see all these glimpses of it, and I'm like, ooh, I want more of that. And maybe she's fighting against the idea of being poised and what's expected of her. I don't know, but I'm just saying, I feel like more people should be talking about how great she's doing. Gigi is still outstanding, but I think she's at risk of losing some fans unless she can get, now, being in the bottom this week, is she handled it very gracefully. She didn't pitch a fit. She didn't talk about, do you know who I am? So we'll see how next week goes. A lot of times these little course corrections are done where now they have a chance to show their heart, and and you get this great story arc. So we'll see how she does. They clearly think I think everyone's kind of assumed since the beginning that Sherry was going to be one of the finalists. Not going to happen now, so it would be interesting to see how that plays off, if they're going to have 4 and they're just going to have 3, if they had 3 and they're going to add someone back. Anyway, I love Jackie. Jackie hasn't shined quite the way you need to win, but there's still time. But yeah, Crystal, Widow, and Jan were up. Heidi has been up and down. Heidi, to me, I remember the very first week we saw Heidi, me talking about how I loved her. She was so funny. She didn't perform that well, but when she danced, she's a performer, and that was amazing. And so I feel like I've always liked Heidi, but Heidi is, they're surprised with how much they like. That's never good. That's never good when the judges do that. So now understand, I don't want Crystal to go home. I'm okay with Widow going at this point. Widow is another person who's had problems. I'm okay in the future episodes. In terms of Crystal, I don't necessarily want Crystal to go home, but the judges aren't seeing it, and I can see that they're not seeing it. My point with all of these reality shows is that we've seen this enough times to know this person is most likely not going to pull it off and make it into the finale. They just, the judges aren't seeing it. And that's the judges' fault. I don't blame Widow sending Jan home. It's not Widow's fault. It's not the competitor's fault. Unless they directly say something to someone, they can't be held accountable for the judge's decision. But I think I'm okay with this decision, because it was clear last week with Jan not winning that they just don't see the sparkle. And I think Jan might have been hurt. Jan studied RuPaul's Drag Race, is a super fan. That might have hurt Jan a little bit, but we'll see. I'm certainly hoping that Heidi can make more money than $9,000 next year performing. Although it made me really sad, because right now is probably when she would make all that money and everyone is stuck at home. So hit me up in the comments. To be clear, you can feel totally differently. You can say Jada's, overrated. I mean, I wouldn't be mean to her or anything, but don't be mean to any of the drag queens. But, I'm okay if you feel like, no, you're ridiculous or whatever. I guess don't be mean. But anyway, hit me up in the comments. Tell me what your thoughts are Are you heartbroken? That's totally understandable. Does this seem as an inevitable conclusion? Heartbreaking but inevitable conclusion. How are you feeling? So, and stay safe this weekend.